right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Flow, your weekly source for Webflow community news and events. We got a good one today. This is a subject that comes up every so often. It came up on the FinSuite stream a while back. We'll pull up that tweet, but I check this every once in a while. I got a calendar reminder to check the size of the Webflow current marketplace. So as always, I'm joined with Colleen Brady here, Webflow community MVP. We're going to claim that title all the way to the end of the year, right? Until they crown a new one, she's got the crown on. So here we go. We've got, as always, the Fig Jam link is in the description if you want to join. The comments are live. The Twitter space is live. What's up, everybody? I see Caesar. What's up, Caesar? I see Shane is also in the Twitter space. So if you want, here's how it works. You can get involved live chat. You can get involved live in the Twitter chat or in the YouTube chat. If you have a thought or comment, you can jump into the Twitter spaces and share that with us audio. And then if you look in the video description, you can actually jump in and join us in the background on the video as well if you're interested in doing that. As the conversation goes and we get into it and you're like, oh, you know what? They got it completely wrong. Or maybe like we missed something or you got some smart point you want to make, like bring it on. That's what we're here for. So hopefully this just evolves into a very interesting conversation. Hello, Penny in the crowd. Let's say hi to the YouTube audience here. So, oh no, the comments are not going to come in. Of course not. What's up? I see Penny, Isabel, Edwards. Hello, Joshua. Kevin's out there. What's up? What's up? What's up? Keep letting us know. Keep saying hi in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. We'll get those figured out as they pop out. What are you thinking, Colleen?
I think we just tested the comments right before the stream. What is this? They should be working just fine. But hey, with any live event, things, you know, there are going to be those little things that are going to hiccup and go awry. And so all you got to do is just sit back, roll with it, and move on to the next thing. So with that, should we start talking a little bit about events, or are you still queuing things up?
No, yeah. Give me 1 second. I'm going to see if I can get these comments in here. So just give me 1 sec to see if I can put this new link in there. Boom. Do we have comments?
Hopefully we've got it. Hopefully we've got it.
Here we go. Boom.
All right.
Oh, no comments. Okay, we'll try again.
Well,
all right, we'll get back to it. Let's go to the State of Flow website. Let's talk about upcoming events and information real quick. We always spend the first couple minutes of the stream talking about that. So today we have how big will Webflow get? Let's go to the screenshot view here. Let's get rid of the phone real quick. Okay, how big will Webflow get? That's happening right now. Friendback Cafe, Devin Fountain is doing that with the Flow Party. That's always happening Tuesdays after the stream here, so at 2 p.m. The Webflow show is back with Mason Poe. This is going to be a good one. So Keith Armstrong, Melissa Mendez, Grace Walker, and Mason Poe. That's tomorrow on Twitter Spaces. Go ahead and RSVP for that. Oh, there's a Webflow LA meetup before a talk by Chris Doe. Who's hosting this? This was
Hal Zaitlin? Yeah. So if you're in that area, both the Chris Doe talk, I'm sure, is going to be absolutely amazing. And then I thought this was genius that Hal set up this meeting as a chance to, or this dinner as a get together ahead of time for folks to connect and talk.
Yeah, and I'll be in LA the weekend after this. I'm sorry we couldn't coordinate that because that would have been super cool to be out there for that. But if anybody's out in LA, let us know. They got that out there, and then maybe we can grab something out. Lodge is doing their thing. No Code North, water cooler chat number 44. I saw that the other day. I was like, dang, 44. That's a lot of chats. So that's Anto, that's Maria. Who else is involved in that? Omkar.
Omkar and Aviv.
That's right. So yeah, and then Flow London, I think that's sold out, coming up March 23rd. The new Figma to Webflow plugin that's hosted by Webflow. So that's a lot. There's a bunch of stuff. This Mass CSS framework just launched. Reloom launched Reloom Ipsum. That was cool. Go check that out on Product Hunt. If you're not using State of Flow as your community hub dashboard, this is the place where you should be coming to check on community news and events. We keep this updated almost daily. So I think almost daily we're adding new content to this site or touching it in some way or another. So that is enough, I think, for events and whatnot. Let's get into the conversation today, the conversation at hand. Let's see if anything came in on the comments here. We can leave those up on the page while it happens. All right, so, and reminder, if you're on the Twitter Spaces and you want to jump in, feel free anytime. Just request to speak, and we'll bring you up on the stage. So, okay, we're going to talk about how big is the market and where does Webflow stand. Let's cut this music out in the background. Okay, that's enough of that. And again, I don't remember where this came from. I think I replied here. Let me look at the initial, because I think at the end so this is March 17th. Where's the date? March 17th of 2022. So just under a year ago. we were looking at this chart and we were looking to see, okay, in 2022, we have WordPress at 42.9%, Shopify's at 4.3%, Wix at 2.3%. So we were kind of looking to see, like, where does Webflow stack up? This was a question that I had, and we just kind of, pulled this up, and I found this chart, and this is coming from, let's see, W3 Tech, Web Technology Survey. These are like, I think they're scraping data here. So this is pulling from literally like, I never know how to cite their sources, but it's legit. I have looked through this, and this is a legit ranking. So as we're comparing like last time to this time, I wonder what's the best way to like compare the two side by side, because there hasn't been a lot of change on the Webflow side of things, but there has been some change on the other side of things. And I was just interested to see, does anybody ever think about this? Does anybody ever else think about like how big Webflow could potentially get when you see like, WordPress powering 43% of all websites that use a content management system here, if we look at the actual current stats, right? So if we look, it's 43.1 to 42.9. So WordPress actually went up. Its share of the market went up, which is weird though, right, Colleen? Because didn't you showed me this other, where was I?
Yeah, so I mean, there was a tweet the other day, it's just kind of the Google Trends. And this is, I see this type of tweet getting shared periodically. So this is the first time that I've seen this of, basically people going on to Google searching for WordPress. And there's also some that are showing kind of WordPress versus Webflow. And it just seems like WordPress has been going down and Webflow has been going up. So I don't know if it has anything to do with like going back to that qualifier related to content management systems on some of these rankings, because not every site necessarily is using a content management system or is a front end, or I don't know. Anyway, just kind of interesting to see where some of those trend lines are going. Also these types of things don't necessarily factor in, is somebody looking for the tech that's going to power their particular site, or is it I'm looking to get into using something as a developer, or the classic, another classic thing that people can search for is such and such sucks. So there could be just some of these searches could be related to people looking for features, or anyway, there's just a lot of things that could be falling under that umbrella.
And this is just search trends. So just a heads up, this is just search trends. So this doesn't necessarily indicate any of the technology. As we can see, it is still going up in size as just a general relative size to the market. So like WordPress is steadily going up from 2012 to even today. It's still growing. Where again, if we look at some of these other ones, who else went up? Let's look back at here. So if you look, let's see, Shopify went up from 3.8% to 4.3%. So almost a half a point. That is half a point. Which is as big as Webflow is right now. Just to put it into context, right? Shopify grew last year the size of all of Webflow as it relates to like growing in the space or like their market share size. So again, when you think and when you see, like, I think we're like deep into this Webflow world. And so a lot of times we get real excited and we think like things are going a certain way, and we don't really like put things in a context like that all the time. But literally Shopify grew as a relative share to the entire ecosystem, a whole Webflow, in growth, right? So
that's fine. I mean, that's mind-boggling.
Right.
Yeah. Had not even realized that. I mean, I guess I just have seen, things Shopify here, Shopify there, constantly getting served up Shopify ads and Wix ads on YouTube and that type of thing, but had not, I guess I, for whatever reason, just thought that they were holding steady. But maybe, I don't know, coming out of folks doing things online related to kind of the last couple of years of moving businesses that maybe were brick and mortar and maybe went to Shopify. I don't know. Fascinating.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't surprise me that Shopify is growing, because lots of people are trying to get onto, web. They're trying to sell. Shopify has it figured out for e-commerce at scale online. So in that regard, I do believe that, Shopify will continue to grow. It's apparent, to grow a half a point in a space. And the year's not over yet. So you can see the end of the year, 4.4. So there's still a little, I'm looking at the 2022 chart. I have these backwards. Let me do this. I'm looking
Okay,
at
do we
the,
need to?
yeah, let me just swap these so that the left is the old chart. The left is the screenshot of the old chart, and on the right is the new chart. So let's look at the next one. So we had Shopify Wix. Where did Wix go? So Wix was at 2.3 last year, and Wix at 2.4. It's slated this year. But Wix ended the year last year at 1.9%. So they're up 0.4%, which again is a chunk, right? If Webflow is 6% of the market, which we're seeing right here, and Wix is growing by 0.4%, those are big chunks. So let's look at Squarespace. Squarespace is currently sitting at 2% of the market. Squarespace, 2% of the market, so Squarespace is essentially flat. Joomla went from 1.7, 1.6% to 1.7, 1.8%. So Joomla looks like it's a slightly uptrend. Drupal 1.3, 1.2 is at 1.3, 1.2. So that's the same. Adobe Systems is kind of the same. Adobe Systems is pretty legacy. I got to imagine that slowly that'll trickle off, as that system just kind of, I expect that to stay pretty flat for a while, actually. Google Systems looks like it's going down. Bittrex jumped over. No, Bittrex was above Webflow, 0.8, 0.8. Okay, PrestaShop is the one that jumped over. So PrestaShop was at 0.5% when we looked at this almost a year ago, and now it's at 0.6%. I'm sorry, now it's at 0.7%. So it jumped 0.2%. Webflow looks like it stayed pretty flat here compared to this chart. In 2019, it's the first time it registered on the chart, so 0.1%. All the way up to 0.2% in 2021, 0.4% in 2022, and now it's looking like 0.6% here in 22, what it was trending. But if we look here on this chart, currently it's still saying 0.6% in 2023. So yeah, that just puts things in the concept. We can put this link in the. I'll put this link in the chat real quick. Ikut is asking for the link. Here's the link.
Yeah.
Nope, I didn't grab the link. Let me refresh the page. There it is. All right, there's the link. Boom. Okay, so yeah, so general thoughts. Like that's just the state of the market. That's kind of the first little look here. That was our first talking point, was how big is the market and where does Webflow actually sit? Let's take a second and go to the comments. Colleen, any thoughts on that? Just generally, I think it always puts it into context for me when I see, the actual scale of it like that.
Yeah, I think on a day-to-day basis, just so kind of have the blinders on of just thinking Webflow. But it's always good to take a step, every once in a while to take a step back and take a look at, what is going on in terms of the overall ecosystem. What new entrants are there? Who is it that's maybe declining? And why might that be? Is it feature sets? Is it other greater trends that are going on in society or tech or, just that type of thing, because you don't want to get caught flat-footed. You don't want to necessarily get caught in a situation where you are developing, selling, and relying on your business on tech that maybe isn't necessarily going somewhere. So, we've kind of talked a little bit about that on past streams, and just being aware of that ecosystem is potentially an opportunity of what can that mean for your business. So one of the things that's come up several times is Raymmar and I have both come from WordPress over to Webflow. So if WordPress is going down, what is that as a business opportunity for you? If you had potentially been in that WordPress market and in Webflow, you've got knowledge, skills, experience that can potentially talk to people that are also looking maybe to move over.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's so much potential here. I think they serve different clients, different needs. There's so many different platforms that are like out there right now. We've heard the conversation, Framer versus Webflow really recently. That's been all the buzz. Lots of new platforms are out there. There's things like Software that lets you take Airtable and kind of build a little web instance out of it. There's things that you can turn your Notion website into web things. Even things like Linktree, are platforms that people don't think of. A Substack, Patreon, OnlyFans. Like, I know they're not theoretically, like web development platforms, but they are platforms where people are hosting content, displaying that to the world, and trying to charge money, which is really the game we're playing here, right? Like that's the game that people are playing. That's why I think Shopify is increasing, because Shopify has figured out the most direct way for people to kind of extract commerce from their app. And Shopify does a lot of cool things with their Shopify app, And so even though you're using some small web owner's website, they give you this really powerful tool for like tracking. I had something I bought the other day, and it was like a really cool tracking experience in the Shop app. And I have all my Shopify purchases in that one app. Again, really cool stuff coming from an ecosystem. So anyway, I think there's lots of things that are going to pop up in how people figure out how to get online, how to turn that online stuff into traction, dollars, attention, whatever it may be, to take their career to the next level. So now, yeah, go ahead, Colleen.
Yeah, no, go on.
No, I was just going to say that the comments are back. We can come back here. The Twitter photo is amazing. Josh, I'm not sure which one you're talking about here, but hope you're feeling better, Josh. Yeah. Anyway, Isabel, that's so cool. It's so cool. I don't know what that's. Maybe they're talking about the Twitter photo. Hey, y'all. What's up, Dale? Stars in the house. Acute. What's up? What's up? Ishan is here. Alexandria. Nice to catch you live. Welcome. Let's see. Star. WordPress is ancient technology like stone tablets. Okay, I understand that. You think that. But lots of people have like I still my personal website still has. Oh, I know. Okay. But I still have some WordPress sites under my belt. Like I still have WordPress servers because there's a lot of legacy things that you don't necessarily want to change or figure out or rebuild or update. And it becomes expensive when it's just there and it's working and you just like, okay, we're just going to leave that over there. And we'll spend maybe new stuff. Maybe I'll go explore a new platform or do something new. But a lot of that architecture is just going to be there until it breaks. And so that's why there's going to be a lot of time. And that's why there's a lot of opportunity for you all to kind of go out and get it. But also WordPress is not an ancient technology. WordPress is actively being developed on. WordPress is ancient if you're still thinking about like going in and getting a page builder and doing some real like simple drag and drop stuff. That's a terrible experience. But what WordPress still is dominantly, as this chart shows, the biggest content management system on the internet. And they have something called the REST API. And that allows you to basically access the content in the content management system and display it however you want. And so you can build a React front end, you can build a custom theme, you can do whatever you want and host the data on the back end of WordPress and just spit it into that. So basically, we've talked about front end as a service. We've talked about some of this architecture and how these things work in the past in previous streams. But a lot of people are building modern front ends and just using WordPress to host the back end. Okay. And so this is why there's still growth. This is why it's still relevant. There's so many tools. It's open source. There's so many plugins. There's all of these things out there. And so as we look at our talking points here, like will Webflow ever reach their full potential? Let's go into that one next. We'll look at some key competitors. But I want to talk about what could propel them to the top and what might hold them back as we go through this, because there are a lot of things that you have to overcome, that open source part being one of them, the size of the development community being another. So Webflow really is not developer friendly yet. And so I think that could be one of the things that, they need to open up the door. They recognize this. They're actively working on building out their developer environment. We've seen teases of things like DevLink. And so I know this is on their radar. But this is not going to happen like tomorrow. This is still, I've talked about this for years now, that Webflow is 2 to 3 years out, 5 years out from really being the potential player it could be. It's up to them whether they actually hit that potential, which I think is the fun part of this stream, and figuring out whether yay or nay they're going to actually reach the full potential. Like, does Webflow become 5 points on this chart ever? Like if we look at this board and we're like, okay, Webflow is this line here. It's 0.6% now. Does it ever become, like what if Webflow is 4% or 5%? How big a market is that? That's not even that much. So, I don't know. Go ahead, Colleen. You got a thought there?
I just want it to be.
Yeah.
And I think everybody has plays a role in that. And that maybe comes up to a little bit later for one of our talking points. So should we keep going through some of the comments? Because there are some good comments.
Yeah, let's see. Josh says, I think it's helpful to remember that the market is still growing. So it's not like it's a capped market where they're competing for a share. Correct. Lots of people are coming online. However, there is kind of like a standard size of the market, and that's kind of what they're representing here. The pie is growing overall, for sure. Oh, which brings me to this other thing I wanted to show. Let me pull up my mailbox. Let me pull up my email. Let me see. Can I zoom in on this? Because I get these emails pretty regularly from Built With. And here goes. Just want to let you know some new leads on your report on Built With. And apparently I signed up for a report some time ago to tell me how many new Webflow sites versus how many new WordPress sites. And this every month. So 51,708 new WordPress leads versus 86,459 new Webflow leads. I think this is the amount of times that you click on this Built With site and it scans a site. I think that's what this is telling me, is the number of new websites being built. And if we go back to July, the first time I got this message was 67,000 new WordPress leads to 104 new Webflow leads. That was July of 2022. If we go to September of 2022, 54,000 WordPress leads, 92,000 Webflow leads. I don't know what the numbers are there. It's not exactly double, but it's close to double, right? Let's go to October 2022. 51,000 to 76,000. So the rate of growth is significant one over the other. Now there's a huge market to catch up, right? That's what we're looking at here, right? So from 0.6 to anywhere up in the real realm up here is a big market. But as you can see, the growth is significant, you know, at a multiple, right? At a multiple of what new sites. So 55,000, so 56,000 new WordPress leads, 89,000 new Webflow leads. And then if we go all the way up to February of this year, the most recent report, that's what it's showing me here, 51 to 86. So even just that is an interesting thing. The rate of growth, the rate of new sites is scaling. I don't know. It'd be interesting to have this chart. I wonder if I could go back in there and change this report to also include like the Shopify and the, you know, let's say, whatever the other Framer and whatever other tech. I don't know. It could be overwhelming to just add everyone in here. But I'm going to keep tracking this stuff because it's just so interesting to me to watch this market grow. Acute is saying, Raymmar, I think what's going on here is that people who mostly make websites on their own are set. So less Google searches, but agencies based on WordPress reach out to clients directly. Yeah, it's the elephant in the room. WordPress is the elephant in the room. If you go to big agencies, their devs are familiar with it. Again, the developer ecosystem, just for the same way React is, you know, a really popular framework, Angular, you know, it's just like there's a big developer ecosystem for those things out there versus like whatever the newest thing is, you know, that's always going to be that because it's the established technology. So I agree with some of that. Let's go to the front here and see what people are. Such leads are dangerous because there's also a bias attached to these apps. People who are more likely to check with such tools might be more likely to use Webflow. I don't know. I don't agree with that at all because this is just scanning the, you know, the web to see what sites people are building. This has nothing to do with the people who use built with. I'm not sure that's impacting at all. So Floxies, hi. I'm assuming this is Claudia. Great to see you, Colleen and Ray. It's Raymmar, Claudia. I don't know who Ray is. Okay, you have to teach clients why you're advocating for Webflow and why it's a good fit for them. Okay. I think when most clients want, this is Isabel, I think when most clients want a fully custom website, they think the only option is hard coding and using developers. Do you think most of Webflow's growth has come from designer advocation? Interesting. I do think that's where they're tapping into as a primary touch point is designers who are now getting the potential to be able to build things they were always limited to building. That's where like they caught my attention. I was a WordPress guy all the way. I was building lots of websites with WordPress. I was making money with WordPress. And then I always had this thought where like, man, I'm just not being able to build what I really want to build here. And I was always looking for something like Webflow. I was playing with all the front drag and drop builders in WordPress. I was playing with all the new tools and all the new toys. And I was like, this is just not it. And then I stumbled into Webflow, and this is in 2017 for me, mid 2017 when I started like playing with it. And immediately I realized there was something different here, and it was more like code, but it was still not code. And that intrigued me. And it took me like 6 months of just kind of beating my head into it before I really got into it. And I was like, okay. And I built my first Webflow site. And I think that's what's happening here. I think Webflow messed up a little bit by going so hard into this no code space. Like they went so hard trying to be like the Squarespace competitor, the Wix competitor, that in their positioning, they did a great job because they did set a whole trend. This no code thing became a big deal. And I think a lot of that was part of Webflow's push, no code conf, a lot of their activity. They were right on the cusp of when that kind of broke into the mainstream. But I think it also set them back in the context that it set the expectation for most people that it was a simple drag and drop visual tool. And what you're seeing them do now is like a 180-degree turn away from that and saying, no, this is code. It's just visual code, right? Like there's technical complexity here because you have to understand that. And Isabel, I think that's part of where their next growth is going to come. I think it has come kind of from reaching into designers, and it will still grow from there. But I think what you'll also start to see is front-end devs and people who are familiar with code, especially as Webflow opens more and more of the back end, you'll see more of that start to come in as people figure out like, oh, this is a true abstraction, one-to-one HTML to CSS. It's not just a drag and drop, WYSIWYG, something or other?
I see some of that, but I also feel like the definition of no code has undergone some trends too, and evolution. So I don't know. I mean, I think it will be interesting. There has been some tweets over the past week past 2 weeks of folks diving in and kind of looking behind the scenes of, is there a new Webflow homepage coming, and potentially maybe what does that mean in terms of branding and that type of thing. But I do think Isabel's raised an interesting question that I hadn't really thought about of that designer advocacy. I mean, one of the ways that Stripe was able to kind of get up and running early on was that they reached out to developers and got developers behind them. And so I think there is something there of having reached out to designers, and I guess time will tell of where does that next shift come.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, and this is one of those things too, where we've seen them be very slow to release features and really kind of building out all sorts of different teams and scaling out systems and bringing in new employees and blah, 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 blah. We all wish Logic would move faster and DevLink would just be here for us and all these little things that we just want to see that, I mean, even think about e-commerce or multi-language support or 10,000 items, right? Like, how long have some of these things been limitations that I'm sure internally have to be parts of, what's going to get them to the top, right? So let's go into the, we've kind of gone through some of the competitors. I think we can dive back into that here in a second, because I want to talk a little bit about Raymmar and, some of the differences there. But I think that could be one of the things that holds them back, right? If they're not releasing these features, if they stay a little stagnant, if they get stuck, if they, those could be the reasons that maybe they don't reach that full potential. But I think at this point, the game is theirs to win or lose. I think if in 5 years, Webflow's not the front end for, 30% of the internet, 20%, they could literally flip this chart on its head. I think they screwed something up along the way. And there's a million booby traps that could be, right? It could be a regulatory issue. This could be some kind of compliance issue. This could be some kind of legal issue. This could be something as silly as Silicon Valley Bank crashing and all their money gets locked up, right? I don't know if Webflow had any entanglement in that, but maybe, right? And so there's all sorts of things that, we all think oh, this is going to be the next whatever moonshot. And it could be. I think it has potential to be everything we think it is. But I also think that, that doesn't mean it's gonna just happen. And so thinking about, and I don't know, maybe you guys could think, as you think of these questions on screen right now, what do you think who's a key competitor right now? I know Raymar's making some noise. And again, if you're joining us, I see some extra people joining us on the Twitter Spaces. So if you're joining, feel free to request to speak if you've got a thought or you want to ask a question. But who are the key competitors that you think could give Webflow a run for their money right now? Go ahead, Colleen.
I was going to say, one that hasn't come up yet is Bubble.
Yeah.
In today's conversation.
I don't know. I don't know if Bubble's really gonna get there. I would be interesting. I'm rooting for them. They're so powerful on the back end. I think a lot of potential there. I think the app is kind of just, you almost have to learn something that's technically complex as software. So why not learn to code? I don't know. Those are Bubble's a whole different beast. And maybe lots of Bubble people in the audience are you just don't know Bubble.
Well, and I do. I mean, I think Bubble is a different beast. Each time that I go in and open up Bubble, I feel like it is a very different mindset of types of things to go. But, what happens, we don't necessarily know what the interface is going to be. We've seen a little bit of Webflow with Logic. We don't necessarily know all the things with DevLink. What levels of complexity are potentially going to be getting introduced with some of that additional power. And so maybe there ends up being a little bit more kind of head-to-head competition between those two and what's possible with being built. Yeah. I don't necessarily know. I don't have a crystal ball on that, but I do think it's interesting. I do think it's interesting too, taking a look at, Bubble this week is having a session where they're talking about this AI, artificial intelligence residency that they're about to launch, which I thought was really kind of an interesting topic. And basically that is a chance people can apply. They're going to select several people for basically a 3-month commitment to come in and work with them somehow about relating and using AI within what AI and Bubble potentially could be in the future. So I thought that was interesting if they're reaching out into the community to pull people in for a limited engagement to somehow help fuel product development and where that's going to go.
Yeah.
So,
let's see, Joshua. No code without dev time message kind of came back to bite them. Yeah. When it tried to make edits on their own, when a client came back to try to make edits on their own. I think this happens a lot. I think, again, this goes back to like we've, one of my most popular tweets ever was like, please stop calling Webflow easy, right? Like stop saying it's easy for Webflow. It may be easy for you because you've learned it, but Webflow is not easy. The tool is not easy to learn, especially if you don't have any web skills. And I think that's where Webflow kind of fits the perfect niche is like, it's like the full code, and then you have all the drag and drop front ends, things trying to make it easy. And then you have Webflow kind of stuck somewhere in the middle where they're like, some things are easy, and then some things require like you to know CSS positioning and the structure of HTML and how all of these CSS properties work and what naming conventions will make sense for something like this. And like you have to know a lot more. Whereas like, again, with a Webflow or with a WordPress or a Squarespace or a Shopify or one of these things, when you have a theme, you can't break the site. The responsiveness of the site, it kind of is baked in. And some of these elements, will never going to just and look like what? They're just not going to do that. There's like guardrails. Whereas with Webflow, there's none of these guardrails. And I think what happens is, even with the Framer stuff right now, I think there's a lot of people who use Webflow who are expecting it to be, because of the expectations that have been set, they're expecting it to be this overly simplistic tool. And that's why when Framer comes in and it's just a little bit simpler, but still gives you a lot of visual fidelity, it's like, oh, this is nice. And there are some things like the Framer, the full canvas, being able to see the mobile view and the different breakpoints in the same scene, being able to pinch and zoom. Like there's some unique things inside of Framer. But I also think Framer is where early Webflow was. Webflow just started as a landing page builder, right? So Framer doesn't have a robust CMS and all of these interactions and a lot of the integrations and things you can do. So I think it really just comes back to, again, what type of tool do you need for the job? What's the best, what's your skill set allow? And, what are you trying to accomplish? Because a lot of times you don't need a fully custom, beautiful Joseph Barry design special. Like a lot of times you don't need that type of thing to accomplish your goals on the internet. And that goes back to conversations that I've heard a couple times in different spaces throughout the last few weeks of just making sure the design hits the goal and kind of accomplishes a specific task. But going back to Webflow, like, I don't know. I'd still be interested to hear what the crowd says about who other key competitors. And then these two things I'd really like to shift the conversation to. What could propel Webflow to the top? So what's the missing thing? What's the like, I don't know, what's the thing they could do or the couple things they could do that would really set them over the top, take them to the next level? And then what could be what's the landmine sitting in front of Webflow right now? That's what I want to know. To me, I think I know what this is. I'm not sure I'm ready to have the conversation on that, but I think I know what this is, what might hold them back. So that's what I'd be interested to know from the comments. What could propel them to the top and what can hold them back? Let's shift the rest of the conversation through that. Colleen, any thoughts? I'm going to run into these comments here unless you have any interesting thoughts here.
No, I would love to get into those two questions. So I don't know if there's anyone who's raised hand on Twitter Spaces too. So if you're listening on Twitter Spaces and want to join the conversation, please raise your hand.
We do have Shane here, but I think I had the volume down. What's up, Shane?
Hey, what's going on?
You're on.
Okay.
Awesome. So I think a couple things there. Webflow's kind of riding the line of like enterprise and then that real low entry point of like drag and drop, or at least they tried to be down there. And I think one of their bigger competitors for CMS, at least enterprise CMS, is like Contentful. And I think kind of going back to those stats, like Webflow may not have a huge market share, but I think for their business, when they chase enterprise, that's huge revenue, right? as opposed to grabbing market share and just having tons of websites built on their platform. So I think like some of these bigger CMS platforms, when they claim they're like headless and they can integrate with all your backend and stuff like that, there's a little bit of competition there for sure. But Webflow is obviously trying to catch up with DevLink and stuff like that. What were some of your other talking points you just threw out there?
What could propel Webflow to the top, and what might hold them down? Those are the two things I want to shift the conversation towards, because I think that's kind of like the gist here is like what could be their secret missing link that we think might help get them to the next level, and then what are some potential landmines? That's where I think, yeah. And if you're watching, share your thoughts in the comments too. What's up, Mathis? I see you in the Matisse in the house. Where in the world are you? Are you in Brazil? Are you in Argentina? Are you in Mexico? Let us know, Matisse. Yeah, Shane, back to you.
I think if they take, I think they could convert their editor side of things into a drag and drop builder. I think that would be a massive gain for them, and just get rid of the class management, take out that technical side of things. I think they could build, I mean, it would be a lot of work, but they could build on top of their platform from the editor standpoint and take on that template based and drag and drop style, and to get more people on their platform.
I don't see that happening. I
Okay.
just don't see Webflow deviating to becoming a like cutting edge drag and drop editor. What I do see happening, and where I think what you're like the gap that I think what you're talking about needs to be filled, because WordPress has a ton of people that can just build with themes, and they can go get a Divi or whatever, something from Theme Forest or some Elementor theme, and they can just kind of build, and they can just drag and drop like what you're saying, Shane. I think where Webflow will solve some of that is with these libraries and components. I just saw Waldo release some new tool for sharing components. I've seen some other tools like that. But I think what you'll start to see is these big libraries where, Shane, what you're talking about is I can design with elements and drag chunks of websites in, and then override styles and maybe get a little better and easier at overriding those elements. Because right now we can see components are getting very complicated. I was in one the other day, like what, where, who, you know, there's so many layers of things to like click, and then there was symbol overrides that are now components, you know, I don't know. It was like, and I see it's going to get more and more complicated. But I do see a time where there's somebody that's between full building in Webflow versus getting into the editor, which is just kind of changing pictures and copy, where you can just drag and drop chunks of a site. You know, you can grab a component. You want a hero section? Boom. You want to compile this page? Grab your little testimonial section, just like you can do with Reloom. But they'll be styled. They'll be baked in. They'll be like all consistent. All of the responsiveness will be in. Those will be the guardrails that I talked about before in the templates that you get with like Squarespace or even WordPress or some of these other tools, where they kind of, now you know, like, hey, us as developers can go in and build the guardrails, and you, client, can drag and pull the things in and kind of build with those building blocks. So we'll be the visual engineers, if you will, and they'll be the Lego builders with our blocks that we build. I see Aiva's got a thought here. Aiva, what's up, buddy?
Hey guys, forgot the time change, so got late. Yeah, I have an idea actually. So I think on all of these questions to add, I love the idea that editor would become a little bit more drag and droppy, as in like Elementor, and that's actually logical, only logical, right? But another thing that Webflow might forget, and that could be the gravestone, is that Webflow gets paid monthly for teams running websites. So they might not even get paid for the development time, right? As the website is not live. So they're making money from websites being online, and websites are never done. So therefore, different people use their tool after the website is done, rather than those who build with it. And that's completely neglected. So we're talking the CMS backend side of things, or just call it editor. But as you guys know, like my completely whole job is to do that after the website is built. So that's a nightmare to do, actually, compared to like, especially things like WordPress and like managing a site after it's done. It's completely still not even 5% there where it has to be, because different people are running it. There's writers, editors, SEOs, content managers. There's like marketing people. Like a lot of people just have to sign in and edit something every day, every hour, every week, every month. And that's something that I think they still kind of neglect. And I hope they will stop doing soon, because those people pay their bills. Like the marketing team that takes over the website is the one that pays their bills. And as we said, like, and as Joshua said in the comments, like, so a little high tier for some of them to edit the site, to make edits, and it's okay, that part I get, but they still update the content, create new pages, like, and that where the drag and drop maybe comes in the editor. But there's also a lot of other how do you manage like a site with 3,000 CMS item in the CMS? Like, how do you edit like 30 of them at the same? How do you send 10 links to editing links that you can open in different tabs? Like, you get where I'm going. It's so much things needed.
But these are things that you can't, like, a lot of, almost no CMS solves those problems though. So it's hard to also be like, oh, Webflow, you got to do X, Y, Z when no one else does certain things. Like even like WordPress, you can't be in, you know, like designing on the same page, right? Like you'll get warnings. And I don't know, maybe there's instances now, or maybe there's tools now that make it a little more collaborative, but there are problems with some of what you're talking about, even making changes to multiple pieces of content at once. You know, you can like maybe change a category or, you know, certain things, but I don't know, there's still limitations.
But you can't on Webflow.
Of course.
So
but that's what I mean.
Like
you
basics, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. You can't say you can't on Webflow and also you can't on X, Y, Z other platform and then use that as a negative for Webflow, because it's like, that's just a negative across the board. Like lots of these tools, there's just such a, like, we're so early. I keep going back to we're so early, right? We're so early that we may not ever arrive to this destination. AI might beat us there, right? Like, but 3 years from now, 5 years from now, there may just be a better, like Webflow might be obsolete, or maybe Webflow just opened up their entire tool and trained an AI, and that's really what's going to be the game changer that we don't know about yet. So we're so early that literally there's so many gaps, and this is why Webflow is not the solution yet, because there's so many of these limitations that stop you. If you're a WordPress person, no matter how like excited you are about seeing something like Webflow, if you're trying to build an e-commerce store, you're going to go to Shopify like in a million years, or WooCommerce before you go to a Webflow. It's just not there yet. And so we're not even at the point where people can start making these decisions to move to Webflow, who might want to move to Webflow for some of these core projects. Now, if you're talking about marketing sites, if you're talking about basic front ends, if you're talking about some of that, that's no problem. You can do those things. And the conversation is getting good here because we got people jumping in apparently. So what's up? We got some people jumping in. We got the comments popping off. Let's jump into some of these comments here. Beer.
Yeah, as you're pulling that up. So if you do want to join kind of backstage like Iva is, and we've now got Autumn and Josh, there's a link in the YouTube description. So
yep.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, they're all in the YouTube description. So, and then if you're on Twitter, you can also join just like Shane was. We've got a few people listening in on Twitter too. So Beer Hunter, yeah, what's up, Shane? So Beer Hunter 68 says, I'm a designer and I'm an advocate for Webflow as I have used it to enter the dev space. The choice for me was WordPress or something, and that was Webflow made more sense to my visual mind. Yeah, this is the other thing, right? We think, Colleen and I, and maybe many of you, have been in this industry for a long time. And so we just had to use WordPress because it was the only thing at the time, right? Or Joomla, or you know, like some of the other, like, you know, whatever. We won't get into listing all of them. But some of the other tools. So we just kind of like defaulted to WordPress. And so now we see this, and now there's like, okay, well, we have a little bit of experience, but most of the people that are coming into the space are new. And so they've kind of got to pick now. And I could imagine if I was looking at these platforms and I looked into WordPress and then looked into Webflow, I'd be like, oh man, where am I headed here? And I don't know that, you know, it would be WordPress because there is such a technical hurdle to get into it, to build anything more than just a basic, simple site. I don't know that WordPress is the solution for that easy to build, intuitive drag and drop front end site like they used to be. And I think that's what we're seeing, again, if we go back to those emails where we're seeing a bigger growth, right? We're seeing 51,000 new sites versus 86,000 new Webflow sites, you know? So, and that trend has been for a while, the number of new WordPress sites versus Webflow sites. Let's see, Claudia had something here. I think one of the factors that really propelled Webflow, especially at the beginning, this is Floxy's community, was the fact that it was very intuitive to designers. DevLink is amazing and is creating that missing bridge. She says, but I also fear that if they become too complex of a tool, it might also defer people from using it. I think, okay, so here's a thought for me to propel Webflow to the top. Separate the tool from the hosting. Step one, you would explode. Webflow would explode. Give me some kind of Adobe Creative Cloud type thing and just completely separate the hosting from the tool, which I think is what DevLink is trying to do. You know, I think DevLink is that potential environment where you could plug Webflow into some kind of development environment, some kind of IDE, and just be in Webflow and working with a dev team, and the connections just happen. And then if you want to host it, then you'll use a different instance. You'll just press host with Webflow. But I could also see like one of the biggest places where other people make money in WordPress is hosting. So it might be interesting to see an ecosystem of hosting build around Webflow. That's their biggest moneymaker. So I don't actually see that happening. But separating their hosting business from the front end builder, I think could be really powerful for them. Having a tool that's just in service of giving people this visual builder and letting them take that front end wherever they want it would be such a big step. And I see Aiva has got some thoughts on this. What say you, buddy?
So yeah, so that comes back to the idea. I also assume that just like WordPress can manage way much better data, and it's not limitations that you mentioned, but the same would happen with teams. They would manage their site on somewhere else, like somewhere where it's built for them to manage that site. And I also think that that's the only way this is going to go forward eventually. Like there's going to be third-party plugins forever. They will be better than native Webflow solutions. So they will be, you can do off if you need for simple stuff, but for more complex, then there's member stack, and same will be for, you can run your site through backend and editor and CMS, but you can also run it many other ways from different backends. So yeah, I think that's where this is going. Like the internet always was connecting different types of things together. So I think we're going there with Webflow. Like we have to understand that it's no other. They're not going to be able to build as much cool stuff natively as we want them to. So we have to build those tools either ourselves or encourage others to build them for us.
Yeah, and we haven't even seen the moment. This is where I go back to the analogy. We are on an iPhone before the App Store, right? If you go back to, I make this analogy all the time. There was BlackBerry and then everything else for a long time. And the iPhone came onto the market. And for the first year or two, the iPhone existed. I don't know, however long it took them from the iPhone release to the App Store. Everyone just thought the iPhone was a toy, right? It was just a cool thing that the hip kids were playing with out on the West Coast or whatever it was, right? All the little tech kids were playing with this thing. And then they came out with the App Store. And that opened up this cool new toy, this beautiful new interface, a la hello, Webflow, beautiful interface, toy, emotional connection to the thing. And then once they opened up the App Store, it was off to the races because now all the developers could build things for this new beautiful toy, which was basically an interface, right? This phone is an interface to the digital world. And it was a step. It was an exponential step. The iPhone was an exponential step up in what you could do with that. And it took them a while to figure out how in that thing to open the environment up to developers, to open that thing they had built, that toy, that beautiful interface to the world. And Webflow's in that space where they just don't know how to open this up to the world yet. And that's where it goes to what could propel them to the top versus what might hold them back. Because if they figure out how to open this thing up properly, the flood of development and things you're going to see as soon as that opens up is going to be like nothing you've ever seen. Mark my words, the flood that's coming of development talent into this space, if they open that up properly, is going to be overwhelming. You will not recognize this space. It'll literally a year or two from now, you just be like, what happened? Okay? But that assumes like everything goes right and the thing just plays out. And so I really do think we're in that iOS BlackBerry phase, and we all know where's BlackBerry now, right? And so it could be more like iOS Android, where the rest of the market still exists and WordPress will still be Android and it'll still be out there and lots of people will still use it. But the people who are looking for that next level of experience, the beautifully integrated plugins, the thing that just fits perfectly, right? That's going to be here potentially, right? That has the potential to happen here. That's not to say it will. Go back to your point, Aiva, or whoever it was real quick. I wanted to talk about, You said something about plugins, and there's a situation with Shopify happening right now where they're kind of like eating the plugins. And so this is another problem. This will be the next problem that occurs. If Webflow is successful in building that developer ecosystem, how then do you make sure that what's happening with Shopify right now is not happening? And the same thing that kind of happened with Apple, right? Evernote was a great note-taking app for a while, and then Apple Notes just kind of like took all their cool features, and now Apple Notes is free. Evernote is kind of like, right? And so Shopify is doing the same thing. They're taking their best top-performing apps in the Shopify ecosystem, and they're baking them into the platform natively. And so if Webflow is successful at doing what they're doing, they're really just kind of building their own R&D team that's going to be community driven. And the battle will be, how do you support the ecosystem versus how do you keep the centralized product alive? And that could be, again, one of the things that holds them back, right? Because if they become very predatory with that ecosystem, if they become very controlling, it may not be as inviting a developer environment as you want to be able to hit the mass adoption that you're looking for in the space here. So, I'm gonna go to Aiku. You've been hanging back there. So what do you got to say?
Generally, I think Webflow doesn't only have to open up the backend; they also need to open up the front end, because a lot of these tools, like for example the sorting of JetBrains, or like for example the Airtable CMS from FinSuite, and all of these other tools are Wise. Imagine Wise would be directly integrated in Webflow, where they could just create a custom UI and then just customize everything directly with their system. Right now, Webflow doesn't support it; they have to make some major recodes. But once Webflow doesn't only focus on opening up the backend and also the front end, then they can truly become WordPress level. The current path they're driving with trying to open up the backend and basically just still keeping the front end as clean as possible is, in my opinion, the wrong way to go.
Yeah. I think I only kept up with half of that.
Oh, sorry, I talked fast.
You're so fast, man. Yeah, there's a lot of hurdles, and I think a lot of what you say is right. But I don't know about not opening it enough. Going back to Claudia's point here, whatever she was saying, I also fear that if it becomes too complicated, hello comments? There it is. I also fear that if they become too complex a tool, it might also deter people from using it. I don't know. Code is really complicated. Hang on, Acute. Hang on. Code is really complicated. So I think that there's plenty, and there's lots of things that are visually easy to use. Like look at Canva. Canva will have a website tool. Canva might be the sleeper. Canva might be the sleeper. In 2 years, like everyone might be building websites on Canva, and we're like, what? So
I thought they already did.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like at scale, right? They could have come up with something that's like, excuse me.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that complexity is the barrier to entry here. I think actually Webflow is not complex enough, believe it or not. And them keeping the complexity usable will be for sure something to think about. So that's a good point, Claudia. Let's see. Shopify liquid development gets expensive. Correct. All of this development gets expensive. Same thing with WordPress. You get into like deep custom sites in WordPress, you're going to spend a lot of money, right? These days of, if you just want a basic site that's not connected to anything, that looks pretty, okay, you can go get that for, anywhere between a couple $100 to a couple $1,000. But once you start getting what most people want, which is some kind of integration, some kind of connection to an external data source, some kind of ability to have authentication or user login, to have some kind of commerce element, some kind of transaction moment on the website, like all of these things become complexities that you saw this in restaurants, right? Where there was this moment in restaurants where everyone went from having a cash register to having an iPad with some kind of point of sale system on it. And then there was this explosion of, platforms, and there was Square, and there was this, and there was that. And then eventually, there was only a couple now, right? Because what happens is as that starts out, you start seeing all these new tools, and eventually someone's going to win the game. Someone's going to be so good, at a thing. And I think Webflow's positioned to be that when they hit that next level, it's like hard. Now you go to a restaurant and you try to sell them a point of sale, like you're barking up the wrong tree. Nobody's changing their point of sale because now it's tied into their ordering system, it's tied into their inventory, it's tied into their accounting, it's tied into their payroll, it's tied into their, all these other little things. And so that's where it becomes very impossible to change. And that's where WordPress is in the current state with a lot of things, right? There's just so much potential and things integrated that, yeah, it's just not going to switch real easy. Aiku, what you got to say about he's slow this time?
Okay, so the thing is about the complexity, you're 100% right, but the thing is, what you forget with that is, why does everyone have to have the same access to all the tools? imagine if we have, for example, with Webflow, multiple modes. A mode for clients where they have the simplified view of like Wix with components. Then in this in a dropdown, you can, for example, say editor mode, where Webflow can then, for example, edit now with the divs and all of that, and then also do some simplified logic mode. And then we add a third mode for developers, which has all the tools, no limitations. You can break a lot of things, but then people can basically select, okay, what is my current level and with what should I work with? So clients would exactly have what they need, developers would have all the freedom they want, and this would be basically the solution to the problems. Because when Webflow tries to make the tool, they try to keep it uniform and not too complicated, so everyone can use it. But complication is good because as more complicated it becomes, usually some more possibilities you have. But delivering that complexity is the game in here. I mean, at the end, Webflow is also only simplifying certain steps to do some things. That should be the goal, to simplify it to the level you need it.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I like a lot of that. I think if you go back to what WordPress started out as, right? Like, let's go to this yearly chart again. Let's zoom out here a little bit, and let's go back to 2012 WordPress, 15.8%. And they were around before that, but let's just go back here. It was just a blogging platform. And then slowly they added the ability to design pages. And then you could add custom post types. And then you could add custom themes. And then you could add all these other little dingy, you know? And then it became this crazy monster that it is today. So I think you're exactly right, Aikut. I just think we're early. I'm going to keep coming back to we're so early. There will be what you're talking about. There will be full dev access, and that's what you get. That's core Webflow. Then there will be the other layers, like we talked about before, where maybe it's just a designer, and that's more that drag and drop experience, where you're just designing with libraries, grabbing chunks of content, changing the content inside of those things. Maybe there's some basic conditional triggers and toggles. Because if you go into like a Webflow or a WordPress theme or a Shopify theme, what you get are very like boxed in elements that then there's settings on, which will be a lot like these Webflow components, I have to imagine, down the road, where once you drag something in, then you can pick, okay, do you want this type of theme? Do you want this type of arrangement? Do you want this thing conditionally on or off? And that's what this drag and drop designer, you know, person might do. But again, we go back to the AI where you might just ask it, hey, create me a trending arrangement of this page, and it pulls everything on site, and you're just kind of like tweaking that stuff. So I don't know. I don't know how all this stuff's going to evolve. Paul Ratchford, the investors will drive. Okay. The investors will drive much of what happens. Investor, I want to see a return. Webflow, how about we sell Adobe? Go ahead.
I think that was probably to Adobe. Wasn't that
How about we sell to Adobe? Maybe. I don't know. Okay, two things. I do think, obviously, there's a lot of investor money inside of Webflow now, and it's impossible to say that that hasn't impacted their trajectory or how they're making decisions or how they're building the teams out. But I do also know that part of those early investor deals gave them the opportunity, gave Webflow decision-making control. So I don't know that a lot of that is changing or is going to change. I think, I don't know. It's hard to say that that's not true, but I don't know that I see Webflow selling to Adobe anytime soon. I think there's a mission at hand that they're interested in seeing through to the end. Will they see it through to the end is the topic at hand today. So I think that's that's the real question. Will they hit that potential?
I'd maybe mix it up a little bit. We've been talking about a little bit about looking to Webflow to add this in and add this capability in and allow this and do that. And spend a bit of, since we've also been talking a lot about Shopify and the Shopify apps and WordPress and the WordPress plugins, are we asking too much of Webflow? And this ties up a little bit to I think one of the future questions that was on the Jamboard, which was what could propel them to the top. Is part of propelling them to the top us as developers and designers and creators creating the tools that solve some of these problems. So we have WhaleSync, for example, that's out there for being able to send data from your Airtable base. I'm pretty sure WhaleSync at this point is a two-way connect. So You can have everybody that needs to update something being in Airtable. That Airtable base may be connected to other parts of your business process. So you're not necessarily needing to rely on Webflow logic, Webflow devlink, Webflow this, Webflow that, and being able to put the content that you need to generate, say, for example, all those landing pages for those marketing campaigns. Is it, do we need to, potentially is some of this on for them to be successful on us to think about the tools and such that fill in some of these gaps?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to where just early. Like we can't. Like so many people are trying. If you think about the ecosystem of products that exist already around Webflow without an official like developer support environment, with a very basic API, it's significant, right? If you look at what people are building, it's almost every day somebody's got some new tool that is custom built that plugs into Webflow that'll add some kind of functionality that lets you do X, Y, or Z. And I think we're just early, right? Like we don't know what the rules are going to be like for other people to get involved. And like I said, that's going to be a flood. I think, Webflow will probably have to figure out how to control that flow of people wanting to get in. I got to imagine they're going to screen and check the apps. But before all that happens and before anything builds out, like there's going to be more people just building on top of what already exists. And you've even seen, I don't know if y'all remember that tool like Stackit, that was kind of bypassing Webflow's hosting. So people are going to look for ways to subvert this. People are going to look for ways to work with it and work against it and just try to get the thing to work for what they want it to do, because it is such a versatile and powerful tool that it becomes one of those things that like, it's like a sword, it's a tool in the hand of the person, like the carpenter, right? Like you could have the same hand tool and you give it to me and I'm going to like have some awkward cuts and you're going to get a box that's a little wobbly. You give it to some like proper carpenter and you're going to get this beautiful little thing and it's going to be perfectly level and like nice and square. Like it's just a tool, right? There's lots of things to be done with this tool. And to your point, Colleen, I think those things will be built. I just don't think it's there. Like the potential just hasn't been there yet.
I agree that some of the potential hasn't been there yet, but are we?
We're on this. We're on like the edge of that little cliff, and there's so many people backing up that like some people are just going to get shoved off the edge. So, okay, let's go. Aiva, what you got?
So yeah, I was thinking back to Colleen and what you guys were talking about this whole, are we asking too much of Webflow? The idea is, I was looking now at their mission statement, and their vision is to build world's most powerful no-code development platform. So that would mean that they're doing what they're doing so that they are opening this world of like new creative ways to build things without needing to actually code them, right? That's what they're solving, right? Like WordPress solved another problem 10 years ago or more than 10 years ago. They solved, now everybody can be a media agency. Because before that, you needed 30 developers to just build the whatever needs to be built so that you have a CMS. So they created CMS. Webflow not necessarily created, but kind of created no-code development, as in, I don't need to write a line of code, but I can create whatever I want using code in the web space with HTML and CSS. So I think they're delivering on that promise. And we have to understand that other big problems should be solved by other teams. And that's, I think, how we are not asking too much of Webflow. We're just, as Raymmar said, pushing them to the edge, because we know they're at the edge and this can go sideways if not. If, for example, Framer is now 3%, based on my SEO research, like 3% traffic has that Webflow has, right? So that's what means they're even way earlier. That's like where Webflow was, like, I don't know, 7 years or 5 years ago. But they might catch up. Like if they if they listen to this podcast and run fast, they could really catch up, like with certain things, right?
Nothing's insurmountable. And I think, and there's nothing to say that there can't be 3 Webflows, right? That there can't be Bubble, Webflow, and Framer, and whoever else is going to be at the dance, or some new names, or Canva, or whoever it is that's going to be like, the cutting edge visual software tool, visual building tool.
Or Coda. Coda just released last week. You can now add a custom domain.
Yeah.
To your content. So Coda with all its inbuilt automations, everything like that. You can do some things pretty powerful. And that competition is good. Competition is good.
Yeah.
Just going back to, one thing that I haven't heard mentioned today, we talked a little bit about hosting, but GDPR issues and hosting, if you are not in the US, the fact that all the servers are in the US, that's an issue for some businesses. And so being able to have competition, allows for folks to go for the product that makes sense for them, for the tool set they need and their unique business needs.
Yeah, and as you say that, Floxy is saying, or Notion, or Softer, or Super. It's like
Notion and Super.
I think there is this goes back to, okay, so here's who's going to win this dance, by the way. Whoever includes the audience in the profit machine, right? Who's going to really build this game is the person who makes e-commerce easy, right? So Shopify's leading that charge. But that doesn't mean they're the only player in that space. And secondly, beyond that, it's who gives the creator the biggest potential for them to unshackle themselves from any corporate environment and run free. Whether that's building an agency, whether that's being a freelancer, whether that's building a digital product, whatever it is, whatever that thing is, the platform that wins this game is going to be the most powerful at that, right? That's why community is really important right now. That's why, what we're seeing right now is that people, creative people especially, are working out in the world and looking for ways to connect with each other, to earn and keep, and to restructure the way they do business and transact online, right? For basically up until 2 minutes ago, the only way to do that was with a traditional corporate structure, a legal entity, a brick and mortar business, and a bunch of people in a room working together for a cause. And just recently, especially over the last couple of years, that's been accelerated, where we're now starting to see over the last decade that you can change the way that people work together to earn income, especially through these digital tools. So whoever wins this game may not even be on the stage yet, right? Mm-hmm. There may be somebody who comes out of the blue and they build a tool that puts so much earning potential in the hands of the creators that maybe it's not as powerful as some of these other tools, but it becomes more prolific because, again, the incentive structures are aligned in the benefit of the end user. Maybe that's a little naive, maybe that's a little idealistic, but that's what I think this world is looking for. That's why crypto is exploding right now. That's why visual software development is exploding right now. People are looking for the path to channel their creativity into financial independence. They want to detach from the mechanism, the corporate structure, the machine, and find new ways to organize themselves to build interesting structures that allow them to live the lives they want to live. So, that being said, any thought? Yeah, preaching right now. I see you, Blurred. What's up, Blurred, in the house? Blurred is in Vegas right now. What's up? Can't wait for someone to create this with protocols in Web3. That's the only business model where I've actually seen creators or users get paid from the tool or app. Users hold the value. Holla at your boy. Stay tuned. Okay, Raymmar dropping bars. Yeah, thanks, Shane. Okay, Acute, you got some thoughts here. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so the question was also, are we asking too much of Webflow? And I think Webflow needs to go a different approach. They should not try to go the way all along to actually get to the point where they dominate it. They need to let themselves carry by the community. So I think the only thing we should require for Webflow is stop the development with with all extra features, like for example the CSS blend mode and all of these. They should primarily focus only on opening it up and letting themselves carry, letting them test other people, as we already discussed here, test what works, what doesn't work, and then it just integrate the most critical of these tools in the main workflow. And basically, I think what Webflow's issue is, they're trying to build up the entire ecosystems on their own, and that will eventually go towards failure once a competitor comes out, which includes everyone.
Yeah. Let's see, Joel. I had an extremely interesting call with a startup who are tokenizing ownership. Made me think of you, Raymmar. No crypto or Web3. Interesting. I saw the other day Twitter's playing with tokens, and I don't know if that's going to be a crypto. Think about how many games have these like little in-game currencies that are not cryptos. They're just tokens, and you can buy tokens, and you can share tokens and spend tokens. And I think we're going to see the gamification of a lot of things on the internet. I think we haven't just started to see what this crypto thing is going to be. I think what people think are the existing use cases for crypto are not actually any meaningful use cases for crypto. And so as this stuff is growing, and as this visual development space is growing, and as you see all this community stuff percolating and all these people trying to figure out like how to rewrite these incentive structures and rewrite the rules for business, I think you're going to start seeing lots of innovations and products. And think about this. For the longest time, this goes back to the visual software development thing. For the longest time, problem solving from a technical standpoint only came from places like Silicon Valley, right? Where they had all the devs. And so if you think about what this no code movement is intended to do, or what the visual software development thing is intended to do, is something like 1 out of 400 people can only write code. That's a huge technical hurdle, right? So think about the revolution that came in information distribution when you came out with the printing press, or think about how like if just go back to like drawing plans. If you're an architect and you're drawing with like a big draft, you got this ruler and a table and ink and whatever, and like let's say you screw up the plans halfway through, you got to start over. Like what the fuck? Now you got AutoCAD where you can just delete and do the thing, right? And so like every industry, video, right? You're not slicing 35 millimeter film anymore. You're not in a dark room developing the film anymore. You're just we're all videographers and photographers now. Kind of like all these industries, all these major industries have had these like stair step innovations where they abstract away the complexity and make it easier for mass adoption. And code has not had that yet. We're in the middle of that revolution right now. And so how big will Webflow get? As big as they let themselves, right? They're their only enemy at this point because the potential is huge, right? Literally the potential, if we go here, is the entire market, right? Like that's nothing, 0.6% compared to 43% of WordPress. You know, like who knows if in 5 years or 10 years, you imagine, you know, we're flipping that. Do you know how big this industry would be, even if it's just 10% of the market, even if it's 5%, you know, that's an exponential. That's a, you know, like a 10x growth. Let's say it's a 10x growth. That's 6% of the market. And just think about how much business that is for everyone here. How many new clonables and templates and agencies and products and blah, blah, blah. 10x.
Mind-blowing. Mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And all going back to being early at the start. I think, you know, there was something that I was looking at. I think it was from Rand Fishkin, who Iva may know from years ago. He did the Whiteboard Fridays related to SEO, just talking about like with new platforms, new opportunities that come in when folks are new to a space. They're looking to connect with other new people. And so we've talked time and time again about, you know, the importance of community. And so when there's new entrants going into a new platform and everyone's trying to connect, that is a lot of times when you make the biggest gains, when you make that big gain on the follower count or your reputation being built or this or that, because there's not as much competition. So yeah, I mean, this is great. So, you know, if you've been debating about putting out that clonable or putting out that Chrome extension or putting out whatever, now is the time. Help propel Webflow forward and help propel your own career.
Did somebody say Chrome extension? As he opens up his new favorite toy. Yeah.
So
oh, go ahead.
If you don't mind, Raymmar.
Yeah.
I am sick, so I don't know how I'll sound, but I am actually super excited. Like when people say that we're early, I get excited when I hear that because I think that some people are like, oh, it's so small. But being, you know, younger, I missed out on a lot. Like I missed out on Bitcoin. Like I was way too young. I missed out on like early website explosion, like Web 2.0. Like I missed out on a lot of these things, but now I finally am like, oh no, like now I have something that I can get in on early, and that feels good. So to me, that's actually an encouraging like statement that we're early.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that can be overstated in a lot of ways, right? And in basically anything that's happening in tech. I think over the next 10 years, every rule we know about how society works, how incentives are structured, maybe even how government works. Like think about the chaos we're seeing at every step, right? Money is like in question. there's upheaval in so many ways. Like if you think about like just the civil unrest that's, we've seen over the last 2 years here in the United States, let alone in other places in the world, it's crazy, right? We had the National Guard active in 27 out of 50 states 2 summers ago. You're seeing stuff like this kind of ferment and pop up everywhere. You see in the financial markets, right? 3 banks have collapsed in the last couple weeks. What? And so I think we are swimming in water that we don't know what's underneath us coming. And we just so happen to be at the front edge of this as creatives and tinkerers and people who are building. And so I think we wanted to do an episode, and maybe we'll do this coming up. We won't be live next week, actually, but the week after, we should do some episode about like kind of overcoming chaos, because I think we're perfectly positioned as creators to thrive in these moments of chaos. As the world's shifting, as things are changing, and as like this stuff is morphing in front of us in real time, like we are, like our brains are baked in to be thriving in this space. Right, as creators, as people who are looking for change, as ADD folks, as people who are kind of like always, this is it, this is our moment, right? Like as the world kind of collapses a little bit, and I don't mean collapse like to be some kind of like the sky is falling, but as things change, as there's movement, like this is when you thrive. This is when opportunity changes. This is when you can change your career trajectory. This is when you can go from nothing to whatever you dream of, because there are no rules right now. There's literally whatever you can do and whatever the path is in front of you, and like how hard you want to work, how creative you can get with the resources, tap into this community. There's so many people out here just trying to help and trying to figure out like, hey, how can I support somebody or do something or collaborate? It's just, the opportunities are there. Anyone who's out here thinking like they don't have a chance, if you've got an access to the computer and the internet, you've got all the tools you need right now, and some time, you've got all the tools you need to kind of just get it done, right? You're talking to somebody who hacked his way into this. The last 10 years of my life have been from shambles into whatever it is that's coming next. Anyone can do this, right? You just got to need a little bit of creativity, and don't listen to the world when they tell you need to be a victim or think of yourself as like somebody who can't get it done, because that's what we do, right? We're problem solvers, we're creative people, we build, we make things, we solve problems for clients, for ourselves, for the world, hopefully. And so anyway, I hate to leave this. We got so much momentum. Keep it going. What's up on Twitter? You got some thoughts? Like, who can we bring in? Who else has got some thoughts? Like, I'm gonna let this thing run as long as it goes, right? You guys are just gonna have to go, even if you just sit here and stare at me. My ugly face will just be like this awkwardly. Staring contests with YouTube. Whoever last to leave wins.
I'm just gonna hang out, keep working on my site that I'm working on, and just chill. Let's do it.
We have wanted to do these like just casual hangouts where we always think like, oh, do they have to last an hour? It's like, well, if you can stay for an hour, stay for an hour. If they gotta last longer, then whatever, you can go too. But yeah, if you're in the Twitter Spaces, hi Ankita, I see you popping in there. I see Christopher popped in. I see Magdalena. What's up? If you're in there, is that Victor? Who's that? Oh, yeah, Victor, what's up? So if you want to pop in, feel free to request to speak. Shane, I see you came off mute. You got some thoughts here?
Dude, I just have to 100% agree. Like, I just think there's so much opportunity, so much potential. And, a year ago when I found Webflow, that's what just got me. I mean, I just had the fire raging inside me in the best way possible. Like, I was just going just like, how did I just find this, And I'm still pretty young, but I was just like, wow, the long-term potential is just insane. And that's kind of my movement on like Twitter and stuff, is just to like be positive and like, yeah, we can kind of peg at Webflow and say, hey, we want this, but like the platform already is just incredible and miles ahead in a lot of ways. And I think I'm just super grateful, to be honest. And yeah, I feel like everything you just said, I just resonate 100%. So
yeah, I'm. Thanks for chiming in. Let's see Shane, that was you too, who says you need a podcast. You have too many thoughts to keep in. Hey, you're on it. You're literally on the podcast right now.
Dude, let's do one together.
This is going to be the goal for this is to have a community conversation /podcast /stream every week. I would love these conversations to be as dynamic as this every week. Again, the link's in the description to join. You see the video, folks, in the top right corner of your screen. There's a link in the YouTube chat where you can just click and pop into that if you want. As you can see, there's folks on Twitter Spaces right now. So if you want to jump in on Twitter Spaces, you can join the conversation and share your thoughts like Shane just was. And then you can also jump into the YouTube chat, which is live right here. Isabel Edwards is saying, is the Webflow community a big USP? I don't know what that means. Does WordPress have a strong community? It feels like Webflow is so special in that way. Okay, this is such a good question. I'm glad you asked this, Isabel. The only time I've ever seen anything like what's happening in this Webflow space in my life is 10 years ago watching WordPress explode. The only time I have ever seen anything close to this. And what I'm talking about is sheer creative output being manifested through digital tools on the internet. When WordPress came out, it was such a revolution to be able to think like, I can be a blogger and I don't need to like go pay lots of money to have a custom website and do whatever. I can just go get this theme, pay a couple bucks a month for a host, and now I have a blog? What? Right? It was just crazy. And so everyone was like, shoo, and it became this thing, and everyone was writing and sharing, and these creative communities, these writer communities, these things that like were built in that moment when all these people who had like felt gatekept their entire life with writing, right? If you're an author, the only way to get published was a book. And who was getting book deals, right? And then all of a sudden, like, I can publish a book? I become the media. Okay, that was a revolutionary thing that happened on WordPress, right? Almost like a printing press, but for the internet. That's where the name came from. Gutenberg, printing press, WordPress. Okay, so what's happening now is the same thing. That the community that was fermenting behind that when that kind of creativity was unleashed was wild. And so, yes, Isabel, WordPress has communities that are bigger than the Webflow community. I talk about this all the time. Like the Elementor community is probably bigger than WordPress or Webflow community, right? Or close to the same size of it. So there's ecosystems inside of WordPress that have communities that are bigger than the Webflow community. The problem is we're just insulated. We're here. We're inside of it. We're inside of the Twitter echo chamber and the community echo chamber here for Webflow. So it looks so strong and powerful. But yes, that does exist. Aiva, what's up? Oh, you're muted, bud.
Sorry. Yeah, no. So yeah, on that thought, I thought to also add, and think of what happened after you open. So before you said like everybody, you want to write a book, publishers are gatekeeping, right? You want to have opinion, like, or you want to publish news, you're kept by like just technology itself, right? And then WordPress says, hey, you want to have a blog, you want to have a news channel, you want to have your own Forbes, kind of, you know, that's what happened. Like anybody can have their own Forbes now. And think of what later, like Medium came out. Now we cannot live our lives or businesses must have content strategy inside, because otherwise you're just done, right? You have to have it. So the same is kind of now happening with the code. Like, as you said, like code was gate kept by those who would learn it. And now as tools become more and more no code, that becomes not a, like I can build now, I know affiliate or whatever sites with Webflow that I wish I could with WordPress by a like 99% margin. It's how technologically advanced it became. So I think if you think of what happens when you open like writing as a thing, and now everybody has to learn how to write because otherwise you just kind of unemployable in a way, right? Same happens now with no code. Like 10 years from now, everybody will need to learn how to do it. Same happened before, 10 years before WordPress with Excel and Word, right? Now it's a skill that nobody even assumes that you don't have, like how to use basic Excel and basic Word, right? So I think this is where it's going. So if ever it gets at it's only 0.6%, think of what's going to happen from here, because it's going to be so crazy that if it pans out, then it's going to pan out in the ways we can't even imagine and comprehend, because how far it is from WordPress, just a blog with no editing capabilities, to like Medium as a website that now everybody writes and can get paid money, basically like YouTube for bloggers or something. So that's where we kind of just first step of that, right?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think there's, again, so much potential here. It's just up to us to kind of shape it. One thing I think is going to be important for us as a community, going back to like what Nicola is saying here, that the community is, the quality is different. Maybe. I think. Go ahead, Colleen.
100%.
You what?
I agree 100% with Nicola Toledo.
I agree. But I also think that we're early and more people are going to come into the space, which means they're going to bring like shitty people into the space, which means it's going to like get diluted. So over time, it is our responsibility as these early folks in the community to foster that space, to make sure that we don't gatekeep. And I like Devin Fountain always talks about, just good designers don't gatekeep. He's got that ongoing thread. So I think it's really up to us. It's going to be contingent on us. I think going back to the community Isabel question about like, does WordPress have something like that? Does it such a strong community? I feel like Webflow is so special in that way. I agree. But what I think, okay, and this is what I go back to. I've mentioned this a couple times too. The community is also there because they're creative folks who understand the power that these digital tools are giving them, and they want to pass that on. That's that special sauce. When you unlock one of these superpowers in your life, it does feel like a superpower. Like when you go from not being able to build on the web to being a Webflow pro, you feel like invincible. You're like, yeah, this thing that you couldn't do, now you can do. And so you're like, other people should know how to do that too, because look, I just made 5,000 on this website or 10,000 on this website or whatever it is. I just made 100 grand last year, or I just made 500 bucks on it, whatever it is. I need to show other people this tool now, right? And that's then becomes this compounding, this positive feedback loop. And so I don't think that's going to go anywhere. What I think we need to make sure doesn't happen, and I see this happening a lot, people stealing other people's work, people not attributing credit where credit is due, folks who want to steal value from this community to build their business and then abandon the community as soon as they build as much value as they possibly can out of the people who are building that community for them. Like there's a lot of things that are going to change in the way that this ecosystem works. And so it does, become incumbent on us as the folks who are here early to make sure that that kind of sticks. This community is what made me see the potential here. Like Beer Hunter saying, we got to make sure that sticks around.
Maybe that's also a future topic for a future stream, as I've been seeing conversations recently about people's work being ripped off and passed off. And some of the threads are a little bit heartbreaking, especially when you start to think of like how much time and effort somebody went in or a company went in to design something, and then somebody else comes along with a clonable and then sticks it in the marketplace, and it's an exact copy of what had been done. And there's just over the past year, I'm just thinking of a couple of different instances. I mean, Connor Finlayson did a video at one point, roughly a year ago, of some things that had happened with his business.
Yeah.
And so, the push and pull of do we call out, do we not call out? And I think there's a fine rope there of sometimes maybe somebody doesn't realize exactly what they've done. But then there are the cases where there's somebody who's deliberate and knows exactly what it is that they're doing.
Yeah. Let's see. We're here because of the very first Global Open House, and I'll always remember that. Floxies. Speaking of Global Open House, it's coming up on the 16th. Let's see. stateofflow.io/open house. Yeah, May 16th. Sign up for, it was supposed to be March 21st. So next week, but I'll actually be in LA next week, so that couldn't happen. And, trying to get Vlad and some other folks. We also have another big campaign that we're trying to put together with this. So sneaky. So Claudia, it's cool that you say that, because I do agree that first Global Open House was kind of a big moment for the community in just kind of a collaborative online meetup. And I think that the next campaign we try to pull off with the open house will also have that same type of effect if we can pull it together. So excited about that. Excited to release some tools again. If you guys see this State of Flow site, a lot of this content is coming from work that Colleen and myself do on a regular basis. She curates these events. So if we can all just give her a little bit of love in the comments, or next time you see her on Twitter. If you've ever just come to this site and be like, hey, what's going on this week that I can go, hang out at? She's the one to thank for that. And yeah, we just want to keep building value and tools in this community. We don't plan to go anywhere. And we're, as you've seen, we're even experimenting, bringing more design stuff into it, more other things outside of just the Webflow conversation. So expect us to kind of continue doing, those types of things as we go. So, Aiva, what's up, buddy? You got something else to say? Oh, sorry, Colleen.
Yeah, I was like kind of following up on Colleen's idea that now, as the both of your ideas. So Colleen is like frustrated that some people are starting to steal the work, which is actually a sign of community getting big enough, and the Webflow as itself like getting profitable enough so there can be more than one plugin on the same thing, solving the same thing. And as well as Raymmar says, this is gonna get a little bit nastier soon, and that's normal. So this is going to be, now we're very open. Now anybody asks a question, we answer, and everybody does that, right? But this is going to be becoming more and more gated. And also gradually there's going to be like groups of certain founders and agencies and things that we're going to group together, and that's normal behavior. But just first signs that we see them basically this year, last year, shows that the maturity is coming. Like Webflow is becoming an early age teenager as opposed to a child, where now it's profitable to copy somebody's work and put it out there almost word by word or line by line of code and just be like, yeah, we also have that, So as sad as it is, we should still be excited about this nastiness is coming kind of thing, right?
Well, I think it's just up to us to stave off as much of it as possible, to welcome new people that are offering value in this community with open arms. I will share with you, when I first started getting into the WordPress world, I started a meetup, I started getting excited. I was like, yeah, this is great. And then I jumped into like a Slack channel that was like the official WordPress Slack channel, because they were like, join the community, get involved, be a part of the thing. And I was like, yeah. And so I jumped in and nobody wanted anything to do with me, right? It was such a locked up clique that I was like, man, fuck this, And it wasn't great, right? I still did my thing, but I think that's where this is headed, by the way. I see a lot of that happening already. It shouldn't be that. And I hope it doesn't become that. I think we need to, again, make sure, because what happens is, and I see why that happens. By the way, I will explain exactly why that happens, because lots of people are going to come in and lots of people are going to want to grift off of this momentum. So lots of people are going to come in and want to just be like, slide right up next to this thing and maybe ride that momentum. And so that leads a lot of people, let's say you're active in this community and you've been putting effort in for 3, 4, 5 years, and then somebody comes in and they get upset because they've been around for a week and they're not, on the Webflow community page. Well, they might get frustrated, and then it becomes hard to foster that. And so there will have to be a constant resetting of expectations as people come in. But I think we also have to keep ourselves patient in that regard, where, like we have to kind of be willing to let some of the, not so valuable or useful people come in the context of finding and giving opportunities for the ones who are going to be valuable to present themselves. Right. So that's kind of where we have to keep the border porous, if you will.
There are always going to be people who abuse things like that. I mean, it's inevitable. But I think just acting in the way that we want to act will lead by example and hopefully make some sort of a difference,
That, and I think it's also to, we are a global community of what may come across as rude to one person may actually be a cultural difference. And so I think we need to be careful of that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Isabel calling us out here. Can you add a state of flow favicon, please? It always takes me so long to find in the tabs. And I just looked up and I just see it's like the Webflow default favicon on the project that's been up there since the freaking conference.
Well, and speaking of the conference, I think Dale Jansen and I think somebody else asked a couple of questions about State of Flow, and we have not brought those comments up.
Let's bring that up real quick. Where are they? Let's see.
They're a little back a ways.
A little further. Okay, let's see. I saw them earlier, and it just wasn't a good time to kind of change the conversation to address them, but now I don't have them. Oh, here. Okay. I think I need to book a flight for the State of Flow ASAP. That will be happening in September. Is there an in-person State of Flow meetup this year? Yes. In September, we will be doing that again. If you missed it last year, it was an absolute blast. We had 100 of the top visual software developers from all over the world came down to St. Pete, Florida to hang out with us. Isabel was there. Let's see who else in the audience was there. Anybody else on the call was there? Trying to see if folks from the audience, if anybody that I'm looking at text-wise was here. Yeah, if you were at State of Flow, sound off in the comments. You're welcome, Isabel. Thank you. I know it won't last for a long time. I want to take the opportunity to connect with cool people and give back to this community before it gets muddy, says Adeline Zaug. Yeah. And this is a cool thing too. Like, just reach out. Everybody, like, nobody in this space is too famous that they won't, like, you know, reply back to you or at least see you. So find creative ways to get plugged in and connect with other folks in the space. That's kind of the fun of it, is just connecting with people on Twitter. And then it's even more fun when those become real connections in the world. And, you know, you get to actually meet in person.
Yeah, so next time you're using a clonable or something, send the person a message. I mean, we don't have comments and such, well, at least last I checked on the showcase. But I've been kind of surprised. There have been a couple of times that I've reached out to somebody and they've just been really surprised, and it's kind of made their day that somebody's actually looking and acknowledging and using their work.
Yep.
So take the 2 seconds.
Aladdin is saying, I just started learning Webflow, being a WordPress theme designer for years, and the most thing I like is a community. Great. I'm going to help you out with one thing, though. Flip the F capitalized to a lowercase and then uppercase P on WordPress. So flip those. Webflow, the F is always presented with a lowercase f. They're not separate words, but WordPress is camel case with the P. Just a heads up. That'll give you like real street cred. When I see somebody on social and they post with the capital F, I'm like, oh, these guys don't know. So yeah, there you go. Content Nest says it. Perfect. All right, I think that's a good break point. This has been a great conversation. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. I like this format. I feel like we're evolving kind of into it. The topic also lent itself well to this type of thing, so we'll keep trying to have that type of open-ended content. I think also something that I'm passionate about, that I can kind of like get on a soapbox a little bit and do my podcast rant like Shane was saying there. But yeah, let us know in the comments or on Twitter how you would like to, you know, maybe get involved. If you'd like to see us have a specific topic, if there's something you want us to talk about or address specifically, you know, we'd be happy to yeah, do whatever. So we're as active as you are if you want to get involved. Otherwise, we'll be here every Tuesday. We will not be here next week, though. So next week I'll be in LA. We will not be doing a State of Flow stream, but the week after we will be back. I'm talking to a couple people in this
Corey.
space. Yeah, Corey. I know I was gonna put Corey on blast, you know, but
I'm sorry. I should not have done that. That was bad on me. I thought he said okay. So.
No, he did. So I think we'll be back on the 28th with Corey Moen with he just released the new MAST naming convention system. What I think we might do is reach out to a couple other people and see if we can just have a conversation about the complexities of naming and, you know, global styles and CSS and the complexities of Webflow, and then we'll, you know, show off MAST as part of that, along with any of the other ones that come up. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. This was the second conversation that went for almost 2 hours now. So I think the design talk went for almost 2 hours. So that's a good sign that these conversations are flowing. Again, if you'd like to get involved, yeah, stay tuned every Tuesday. You can jump in on the video chat. You can jump in on Twitter Spaces and live in the YouTube chat. Any final words from the panel? Anybody that's here? Last thoughts?
Yeah. Thanks for everyone for coming. I mean, these are always fun to see where all they go and what's top of mind for everybody. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Bye, everyone. Also, like the video, would you? Just do a favor on your way out and give that video a like. Make sure you're subscribed. Let's see. Also, do Reloom new product launch, Reloom Ipsum. Yeah. We can
got that on the State of Flow site too.
Yeah, it's on the State of Flow site. We should do, Colleen, we should bring back the show and tell.
Yeah, product
this would be a
launches.
great format for show and tell.
Maybe in 3 weeks.
This would be a good format for show and tell. Maybe it's a different time block. Maybe
different time block.
Maybe some more of that casual, candid conversation we were talking about thing, that show and tell format.
Yeah.
Like we were discussing before. So, okay, everyone, that's enough pontification. I got my fade to black button. We're going to do that now. Bye.